Okay, everyone. It is, let me see here, the live show. Had to get everything centered here. Kind of looks a little messy in the background. Didn't anticipate that. Too late now, Ed. Okay. Got some stuff here. Got some disc golf stuff sitting on this bed. I thought I had organized it, but obviously not. Maybe we want to do something like that. There we go. Maybe that'll look a little better. Okay. How's everybody? Let's have a live show. It is Wednesday after all. I really got to get this room. You know, the problem with this room is that when I cleaned my car out and I thought I was going to sell it, I took a lot of the stuff out of it. Well, a lot of that stuff is still in this room. And now that I've decided I'm probably going to keep my car for at least a few more months, this stuff has just not made it back into the car yet. Oh, well. So that's what's going on behind me. If you're seeing some of these things that you're seeing, really have to get this organized. Maybe I'll have some time tomorrow to do that. But it is Wednesday, and so we're going to do this live show whether I'm organized in this room or not. So let's see who is here. Let me first remind all of you to give this video a thumbs up. Give this live show a thumbs up as you are watching. That helps us with the YouTube algorithms or however they do it. So on your device, look for this thing. You know, what Phil Mickelson was doing a lot on Sunday. I'm going to get to that in a moment. So please, yes, like this video as you're watching it, if you're watching it right now live or if you are watching it in the replay. So let's see who is here. Delane got in first. Hello, Delane. Charlotte, Jasmine, Marlene coming in from Texas. Linda, I have a question from Linda tonight. CR, Kathy, Joyce. Hello, Joyce. Screaming, Susan. Hello, Cherie. Thank you for moderating tonight. Susan, Laura, Twinkle. Coffee asks me, are you still getting a new car? Well, I'm still thinking about it, Coffee, but it's not going to be a new car. It's going to be another car. Still considering it, contemplating it. Was kind of hot on that for like a month. And then I decided that I needed to spend some money in some other areas, mainly actually regarding Unfound that I'll be talking about tonight. So that kind of started, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So it's just not going to happen. Maybe sometime this summer. One of the problems, Coffee, is that used car prices have gone through the roof. It's definitely a seller's market right now. Let's see who else is here. Marlene, how about the great golf? Yeah, I'm gonna be talking about in a second there, Marlene. Hello, LaFord. Sharon. Hello, Sharon, coming in from California. I'm doing good. These weeks go by so fast. I can't believe it's been 2 weeks since I went shooting. You know, I just don't know where the time goes. I just don't know. But it was a beautiful, beautiful hot day here in Clearwater Beach, Florida. Getting some work done, working on the recording of Friday's episode. About done with that. The interview has already been edited. Actually, the interview was done on Sunday. And I listened to it yesterday. And as I usually do, take out all the mistakes that myself and the guest makes. We make some mistakes. And then today, did some recording. Of course, prepared for this live show. Lined up the next Unfound Now that I'm going to be doing. I'll probably be recording that maybe tomorrow. Getting ready for Of course, I'll be talking about that in a bit. My show with Dr. Telesco tomorrow night. So a lot of different things went on today, but I did have some time to get out and throw the discs a little bit for about an hour and a half. And then on my way home, I got some ribs because I'm entitled to them because I'm now down. I got up this morning at 178.8 pounds. So I've lost 12 pounds since March. And I can tell. And I feel real good about that. And so I came home, ate some ribs, took a shower, got ready, did my hair, and then was recording some of the episode. And then 9 o'clock rolled around, and I said, I think it's time to do the live show now. So that's what's gone on with my day today. Very busy, moving around, doing stuff. GS. Hello, GS. No issues, Delane. I hope we're not having issues. It's 9:05. Delane, I'm on here. Everybody's, I don't know, maybe you need to refresh your screen, Delane. Marlene says, we just got done with nearly a week's worth of rain. Well, we've had no rain here. Marlene, none. Cero, zero, nada. And we still got plenty of water here. Trust me. Valerie, how are you, Valerie? And Suzanne says, I deserve ribs. I do deserve ribs, Suzanne. I totally agree. Lima, Ohio. I think I've been there. I think so. Okay. Yes. This weekend was a big weekend. Puma coming from tornado storm warned Texas Panhandle. I've been there too. And I know all about tornado warnings from living in Pennsylvania. We got them there. And sometimes we even get them here in Florida. Yes, this past weekend was a very, very, very special weekend. Little could I have known, I think some of you know, that Phil Mickelson is my favorite athlete. I've been a fan of his, even though I've never played ball golf. But I've been a big fan of his for about 20 years. Two of my favorite athletes of all time was number one, Andre Agassi. I used to watch all of his tournaments, tennis tournaments, the 90s, up until when he retired. When was it? Around 2005, 2006. You know, he's around my age. He and I we were both born in 1970, but a big fan of his. I read his book. I got his book in hardback, actually, when it came out. It was called Open, and how he revealed a lot of things about his life. And I was a big fan of Andre Agassi, so it was fitting, I guess, that I lived in Las Vegas, where he is from. And then I also became a fan of Phil Mickelson, who coincidentally was also born in the same year that I am. He's just a couple months older, not quite 2 months older than I am. And, you know, he hasn't been playing very good golf the last couple years. And in fact, it could be argued that he won the Pebble Beach tournament in 2019. It was almost like a fluke because he was not really playing that well. And this year, not playing well. And then all of a sudden, this past weekend, this is just how golf can go. And being a disc golfer, you just never know. Even as an amateur and a hacker like I am, you just never know when you're going to show up somewhere and you're just going to shoot lights out. And well, didn't he do that this weekend? And I could not take my eyes off the TV. I was still getting work done, still got a lot of work done. In fact, I did the interview for this Friday's episode as the tournament was happening on Sunday, and it's still a fantastic interview. But him winning on Sunday was very emotional for me. I do think that he's a good guy. He's a funny guy. I see how he acts in interviews and things he says and everything. It's probably a lot of the way I would act. Very funny, self-deprecating. Probably the way I would act if I was in his position. So I've been a big fan of his. I'm left-handed. He golfs left-handed. So, and for a few years now, I've been wearing a KPMG hat that I got from a guy that I went to high school with, just happens to work for that company, and I got some hats from him. And I wear those at disc golf tournaments, although recently I've been wearing an Unfound hat. But this weekend, in fact, this past weekend and this weekend, I'll be wearing the KPMG hat just because of Phil winning. So it was a big thrill for me this past weekend. He's going up against Brooks Koepka, who has been very hot the last couple years, probably not number one rated in the world, but he maybe should be, given how many majors he's won the last few years. He's won 4. And, I wouldn't have been surprised if Phil shot like 6 over on Sunday and got blown out. But that's not what happened. And he ended up winning his 6th major. He's the oldest person to ever win a golf major, man or woman. And it's just incredible. And it was a big deal. And I just could not believe it. It was like it was not happening. And probably, I'd have to really think back. This is probably the biggest sports moment for me since Andre Agassi won the French Open in 1999. And I remember that as well. I remember where I was living. I remember getting up to watch it. And he lost the first 2 sets, and then he ended up winning the last 3 sets, and that completed the career Grand Slam for Andre Agassi. And then he won some other majors after that. But this is probably my even bigger than when the Steelers won their 2 Super Bowls in 2005 and 2008. Bigger than when Phil won his first major in 2004 at the Masters. Bigger than when Phil won the British Open, which he didn't really expect to do in 2013. 2012, 2013. This was totally unexpected. Just totally. So this past weekend was a big, big thrill. I DVR'd it, the round and all the coverage afterwards. And that's been playing constantly on my TV since Sunday as I've been doing work and rewatching the interviews, rewatching the round. Because there's nothing, let's just admit, there's nothing else good on TV anyway. So it was a big deal this weekend. Really, really good, and could never have expected it. Kristen, thank you for being very generous. What Kristen did there, everyone, is she hit the super chat button, which is that gray square with a $sign in the middle. If you would like to monetarily contribute to the program, you can do so if you have a PayPal account, something like that, connected to your YouTube account. Of course, that we do not have any advertisements on the program. This program, Unfound, is completely, of course, we have Patreon contributions. We're selling books. I'm going to be talking about the books, but we don't do any advertising on the program for a lot of different reasons. And so you could say it's entirely self-financed, and I don't mind doing that. And because, of course, computer space costs money, managing a website costs money, streaming costs money, all these things, and that's fine. I love it. This is what I do. But we don't accept any advertising for the program. So any contributions we get directly go to the producing of the episodes and everything else. So I deeply appreciate Kristen. You're very generous. Thank you for contributing this evening. Marlene says, we love Phil. Seen him in person twice at the Houston Open years ago. Wow. Very emotional for us, too. Such a great guy. My hubby wears Callaway. Your husband must be pretty cool, Marlene. Never gotten to see him in person. I've only ever been to one golf tournament, actually, way back in 1999, but he wasn't there. But I would certainly like to meet him or watch him play sometime in person. I guess I had a chance when he was up at Innisbrook, but just things go on. But we'd certainly love to do that one of these days. Marlene says, we watched all the TV coverage as well as on Phil. Kathy, Henrik Stenson won the British Open in 2013. Phil was second, a great match. I think that was 2016 that had happened, Kathy. Henrik Stenson won in 2016. Phil did come in second, though. It was a heck of a battle. But I think it was 2013 or 2012 that Phil won. It was like Phil, and then there was, I thought, a couple years passed, and then Phil and Hendrick got into that. Somebody's going to check that, I'm sure. Melissa says, hi, everybody. Sorry we are late. You don't have to apologize, Melissa. But as always, how's everybody doing where you are on the big screen TV tonight? Yeah, so this weekend, I just could not believe it. If you follow me on Facebook, just my private account, where I really don't talk about Unfound much, but I do talk about other parts of my life, disc golf, and really I just try to keep things light there and make jokes and quote songs and things. But you know what I posted when Phil won, I just couldn't believe it. Just still now, 3 days later, still can't believe it. So it was a big deal. Thank you, Melissa. As far as disc golf, this past weekend on Saturday, I had a 1-round tournament at Sarasota at a place called North Water Tower Park. Played very well. Very pleased. Shot even, which I think is my best score on that course ever. Pretty sure. And came in second in my division, although there were not a ton of guys in my division. Came in second. Guy beat me by a stroke, which I'm fine with. So I got to play with my good buddy Kevin. Really, really good guy. He runs the disc golf club up in a place called Oldsmar, which is north of here. And the funny thing is, he is exactly 10 years younger than I am. I'm born August 1st, 1970. He is born August 1st, 1980. It's kind of cool. So he was in the group with me. He actually, I beat him by a stroke, but we're very close. Very close in ability. And, but he's a very good player. And I think he was pleased with his round as well. But this coming weekend, I have 2 rounds, one on Saturday, one on Sunday, and I will be playing the same course again on Saturday. But then on Sunday, I'll be going to another course called Lakeview, which is a shorter course, but has a lot of water. And it can get very windy over there. And what's neat about this Lakeview course, if you look it up, if you go to Google or look up the history of this piece of property, this used to be like an amusement park. And they had these canals that had gondolas. Well, those canals with the water in them are still there. And so I don't know, this amusement park went out of business or something, and they put a disc golf course where this park used to be, but the gondola, the little avenues with the water are still there. And once you see it, it makes, oh yeah, that does make sense once you see how it's constructed. And so it's very neat. The piece of property has a very interesting history. I've played well on that course. I've played not so well on that course, but I like it. I love the history. It's very unique. Very unique type of course. You're not going to play anywhere else. And so I play, once again, Water Tower Park on Saturday and then Lakeview Park in Sarasota on Sunday. And I'll be driving back and forth. It's not that far. Going on over the Skyway Bridge. Beautiful bridge. So that'll be, I think my tee time on Saturday is 1 o'clock. So I'll have to leave here around probably 10. Get down there, warm up, and get ready. And then Sunday I have to go back down. I don't know. Depending on how well I play on Saturday will determine what my tee time is on Sunday. But I did get out play some. Did not play very well over Taylor today, but that's no big deal. Moving on. Woke up yesterday at 178.2 pounds. Today I woke up a couple more ounces than that, but still, I'm now finally into the 170s after a while. kind of 180.2, 180.8, 180.4, 180.6, bouncing. But then within the last 4 days, I've gotten into the 170s, kind of broke through that plateau a little bit. And so that's about 12 pounds since March. And very happy about that. Still, once again, if to remind you what the diet's been, it's been no sugar, very, very, very little carbs, and trying to limit the calories to around 1,700 a day. That's been it. Not very, I don't know how scientific that is, but that's what I've been doing. And the funny thing is, a buddy of mine, Dave, from college, I've known him for 30 years. He's kind of gotten into this as well, and he's losing weight as well. So maybe I'm on something here, although I'm not going to say that what I'm doing is exactly original, but he decided to follow my lead, and it's working for him too. So I guess it must work. Let's see what, hello, Spicy. Spicy. Good to see you, Spicy. Coffee says, do you have a list somewhere of the cases Unfound is covered where bodies have been found? I've never posted that, Coffee. That's a very good question. Probably, I do have that list. Probably could upload it and in as a file into the group if you're in there. If people want to take a look at that, it's I think it's updated to the present. So, sure, I can do that, Coffee. It's a good question. Thank you for bringing that up. I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that before. Thank you, Marlene. Look great, Ed. You mentioned your weight loss. Yes, some people have told me they see it in my face. I don't know about that, but I can definitely see it from here down. 12 pounds. I started at 190. I'm down to 178. So that's like, 10% of 200 would be 5%. So a little more than that, a little less than that, maybe 6, 7. I've lost like 6 or 7% of my weight. It's pretty good. Hello, Deborah. What's going on? And Cherie is posting the website, theunfoundpodcast.com. I need to thank my assistant, Natasha, who does such a great job over there. I really like how we've really gotten into the groove over there, posting information, pictures, maps that go along with the episode. And each disappearance has its own page with that information on there. For example, last week, you could go there, download the PDF files for the private investigator reports that were filled out for Teresa Towne-Woolard's disappearance. So thank you for posting that. Yeah, you should go to theunfoundpodcast.com. Natasha's doing a nice job over there. Delane says, that's so odd, or maybe I'm odd because I fluctuate about 3 pounds daily. Delane, I can hit the, I'm not using a very scientific scale, not using one of those ones where you slide the weight back and forth. It's one of those electronic ones. It's flat. As long as I guess you're using the same scale every day is all that matters. But it is weird how I will hit the exact same weight like 3 days in a row. 180.4, 180.4, 180.4. Is the scale working? Is it not working? I don't know. Sometimes I wonder. But Linda says she would love to see that list. Marlene says, I know it's old now. Still love the Brian Schaefer case. Got done listening to it. More of Kelly Bruce. Found and listened to some of her older stuff. I liked her page, Dead or Alive. Yeah, Kelly does a great job. No doubt about it. Twinkle says, definitely can see it in your face. Really? Okay, Twinkle, if you say so. And I'm going to get to that page, Cherie. Thank you for posting that. I'll get to that in a moment. In other news, personal news, been kind of busy doing some interviews on the phone. Haven't gotten to play the guitar and piano as much as I would like, but it's coming along. It's coming along. It's been some things that I've had to do that I'm going to talk about regarding Unfound that has gotten in the way of me. It's not gotten in the way. Unfound always comes first. Unfound is in front of disc golf and everything else. But there's some things that are unique that have popped up recently, I should say, regarding Unfound that, probably would have been guitar and piano time had these things not come up, but they got to get done, and I'm very excited about them. In last news, before I get into the actual true crime part of the program, I do want to show you some shirts I got recently. We haven't yet talked about music yet tonight. Seems like we talk about that almost every week. Got this shirt. There we go. Got that one. Got these are you wouldn't not believe these shirts are cheap and they're very high quality. This Van Halen World Tour 1978. Guns N' Roses. Los Angeles Coliseum. There you go. And how about this one? Here's a group I don't know if we've talked about very much. Dokken, Back for the Attack. And this was from World Tour 87-88. I could tell you that I've, you would not believe, I got those shirts for under $20 each. I got them. If you ever are interested in shirts like this, you should go to a site called heavyrocks.com. Heavy, ROXX.com. And it is a company in Bulgaria. True story. Bulgaria. And they have a spectacular list of shirts there. Very reasonably priced. And the quality of them is spectacular. I've gotten many shirts from them. They've gone through the wash. They don't shrink. The colors stay great. Amazing. And I would recommend that to everyone. Now, it does take a little while to get to the United States. It takes about a month. They have to go through customs and all that. But very reasonably priced. The shipping's very reasonable. I've probably ordered from them. This is like my third or fourth time. They hit every order correctly. No problems. So if you're into concert shirts like I've become into them, I would recommend that site, heavyrocks.com. So those are some of the shirts. I don't know how many I have now. I have a lot of Iron Maiden shirts, but I have probably 25 concert shirts now. Heavy metal shirts like that, something like that. Probably. Yeah. Thank you, Twinkle. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Suzanne. Marlene says, love the Van Halen, love Dokken also. Yeah. And, I've actually ordered some, I think he knows already, but I've actually ordered some and they're going to my good buddy, Doug. They're on their way right now. It's kind of just a gift just because I felt like it. So, my friend Doug from North Carolina. So he's going to be getting some shirts soon as well. It's happy to do that once in a while. Linda says, how many missing persons cases are you currently interviewing for? I can tell you, Linda, that usually we have about 3 episodes at least going on at one time in some variety of stages. At least 3. I'm usually juggling 3 or 4 at one time, reading about them, going over notes, listening to phone calls, whatever thing I think I need to do. Usually 3 or 4 at a time is about what I think I can manage, Linda, and keep the quality very high. don't think I'd want to go more than that at one time. But for example, did the interview for this coming Friday on Sunday, 3 days ago, I've already done the interview for next Friday. I actually did it last night. So the interview for next Friday is already done. And the interview that will be on the episode for June 11th, so like 2.5 weeks from now, not quite 2.5 weeks, I'm going to be doing that interview. It's scheduled right now for next Monday night. So this is about how things usually go here. To give you an idea. Hello, Louise from UK. What's going on, Louise? Good to see you. Screaming says, looking at Heavy Rock's site right now. Good. Delane says she just bookmarked the site. Okay. Well, I'm doing free advertising for them. Linda says, do you have a waiting list for cases? I would never put it like that, Linda. No, we do not have a waiting list. As soon as I talk to somebody, those first conversations, it's not on the waiting list. It's being worked on one way or the other, either listening to the prior conversation, checking some of the things that the person has told me during that conversation, preparing to talk to that person again. I would not ever put it as a waiting list. I don't think anybody is necessarily waiting. There's certainly, I would say, call it a working list. Do not forget, by the way, as you're watching, please give this video a thumbs up, whether you're watching it live or if you are watching it in the replay. Please like this video. And he says, okay. Everybody's talking back and forth. That's fine by me. Okay, so that's all the personal stuff that is now out of the way. So let's move on. As we usually do when we get to this part of the live show, I want to talk to you about the poll that was done in the discussion group for Teresa Towne-Woolard's disappearance. It's a tough one. Not as many details as we would like. Luckily, it's not a real old one, so there's always hope that new details are going to come out. If not Teresa, of course, hopefully being found alive somewhere. But a majority of you in the discussion group decided that David Wachowicz, however you spell his last name, is most likely responsible for Teresa's disappearance. In the think tank, and being that Shree's already posted it, I'll say it. I'll say it. Patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. If you'd like to be part of the think tank, support this program, go there and sign up at the premium level of $12 a month or above. If you'd like to be part of the think tank opinions were a bit more mixed. A little bit more mixed. Randy Allen, David, did she overdose? Maybe it's somebody else. But I will tell you that for me in the blog, I decided also that David is responsible, and I wrote my reasonings for that in the blog. Once again, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. You only have to contribute at $2 a month to read the blog that I do there. However, you would like to take part in the think tank and get some extra books and be part of Unfound on the Ground, then that requires you being at the premium level of $12 a month or $20 a month, which gets even additional benefits. So that's the conclusion I came to. So for once, I agree with a majority in the discussion group. I don't know how often that happens, but it's not very often. So I take note of it when it does. Speaking of the blog, this is the second week in a row where not only did I write the blog at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast, but I also read it and recorded it so people can either read it, record it, they can do whatever they want once again at patreon.com. Let's take a question, because I know that Linda and Charlotte at least are in here. So let's start with Linda's first. The missing persons flyers in various stores seem to be overlooked because they have been there so long. What do you feel would be a good way for people to start looking at the pictures again, aside from what you're doing here? Linda, you bring up a very good point. That at some point, people don't see those pictures anymore. I think that, at least for me growing up, although it didn't necessarily have to do with missing people, usually have to do with the FBI's most wanted list, something like that. They would post the pictures of these people, usually men, in post offices. Maybe some of you, maybe they still do that. But after a while, it just becomes like the wallpaper. You just walk right by, you just gloss over it. And so, Linda, I think you're picking up on something here. And this is why, for example, when it comes to the discussion group, why we limit the kinds of posts that are in the discussion group and how old the posts are. Because if we were to just allow any post of any person who's ever disappeared in the group, that's all it would be. And it would just be like post after post. And after a while, people don't pay attention to it. That's just human nature. I'm not saying people are bad or anything else. That's just human nature. And so to limit that, to make sure that people pay attention to the posts that are made in the discussion group, we limit them. There are rules as to the rules that must be followed for a post to make it. And if it doesn't follow those rules, it gets deleted, as do the comments to it. So it's kind of the same thing, Linda, that, after a while, flyers are good, but they have a very, very short shelf life. Probably a lot shorter than friends of the missing person realize, shorter than the family realizes. Very, very short shelf life. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. It should be, but we also have to remember that very seldom does handing out flyers lead to the finding of a missing person. We have to remember that. Very rare. Once again, I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, but we have to remember that it is something that usually does not have a ton of success. So not only does it not necessarily have a ton of success, the shelf life of it, if it is going to have success, is very short, probably less than a week. You go up and you start posting picture, a picture of a missing person on a telephone pole. And if it doesn't get ripped down, we hear about that so much in these interviews. Nico Lisa's, for some reason, continues to pop in my mind, although I know it's been mentioned in many other interviews we've done. That if the pictures don't get torn down, that even if they don't get torn down, people probably stop paying attention to them after about a week. Now, what can be done about that? It's just hard to say, Linda. Maybe maybe changing the colors of them. Usually the flyers, depending on how much money are put into them, sometimes the people get these flyers for free. Somebody donates the paper and the ink and all of that. Maybe it helps if the pictures, the colors ever change. Instead of it just being white and black, maybe you change it to red and black or pink and green or something like that. Something that it's the same picture, but in different colors to catch people's attention, because once in a while, after a while, it just becomes the background. And so that's one idea that comes to mind. But I think overall, we just have to remember that these flyers, 99.9% of the time do not help finding a missing person. I know that's That's just the truth. It's no different for missing persons cases. It's the same for what I brought up, the FBI and the police looking for some, a killer or something and putting his or her picture in a post office. It's the same thing. After a while, people don't pay attention, even though the person is a killer or killed multiple people or is a terrorist or whatever else. At some point, people just don't see it anymore. So, and that's just a factor of human nature. I think, this kind of reminds me of that show Missing. I haven't talked about that show for a while, but just within the last month, I came upon it again, like on a Saturday morning or something. And I remember a few years ago, I was talking about it and was very critical of it. It's the same thing. It's the same show over and over and over. And after a while, people don't pay attention. So I don't have a good answer for you, but it would seem to me that if you want to get people's attention again to the same poster, maybe, change out the colors or change out the sizing or change out different picture, different writing, different this, different that. Just don't let one flyer just sit there, black and white, stay there. You got to switch it out. Just like companies are changing their logos once in a while. Maybe that's what needs to be done with missing persons flyers posters that are going to be put up in a place like a post office or whatever else, where they're not necessarily going to get ripped down. In places where you can post them where they're not going to be ripped down, you may need to change them out more than you realize to keep them fresh so people don't ignore them. So that is some of the things being said here. Kathy sorry to hear about that, Kathy. Yeah, sorry to hear about that. Screaming says, please remember to hit the thumbs up button. Thank you, Screaming. Cherie, Tom Brown's got cut. I'm thinking about Allison Watterson out of Oregon, got torn down because they didn't want it in their neighborhood. Yep. Tom Brown's the first signs got cut or ripped down, and then they got ripped down again, but the guy got cut that time. We don't know if he was the same guy who did it the first time around, but yeah, a lot of these things get ripped down because people don't want their towns diminished and criticized and everything else, which is bizarre. So it happens. Renee Lamana, Cherie, Renee, did it also happen to Renee Lamana's? If you say so, I believe you. Very well. But it does seem to me that within the last few months, was it Kaya Taylor's? I think it was Kaya Taylor's, where her mother said that they put up flyers and they got ripped down over in the Plant City area. So it happens. And for a lot of different reasons. It could be some person like in Tom Brown's situation, or it could just be kids just seeing something and written down, do not know don't understand the implications. A lot of different reasons, but it is weird. It is weird. And how many times people don't see these things being ripped down at all. That's probably the other weird part about it, that nobody sees it happening. Charlotte says Walmart used to have the posters up in their lobbies. Yeah. Linda says, what is sad about the flyers in Walmart is they never seem to change. Yeah, you got to change them out. Got to change them out. Whoever's putting them up has to understand that once a month you should go in there and put a different one up. Different colors, different picture, different font, different, to make sure that, because a lot of people go to the same Walmart over and over and over again. I don't go to Walmart that much, but a lot of people do. And it helps to switch it out. Shree says getting signs of flyers getting ripped down seems to happen pretty frequently. It does. It does seem that, Shree. Way, way more than we'd ever expect. Yeah. Shree says, I've never heard of a disappearance being solved by a flyer. Neither have I, but I'm not going to go so far, Shree, as to say that flyers shouldn't, be used. I don't think we're to that point yet, but I think the statistics say what they say. Mm-hmm. Charlotte says, yes, Kathy, it's making me very depressed. Kathy, sorry to hear about all of that, Kathy. Linda says, our local news has been reporting on cold cases, and I requested Craig Freer. Happy to say it is being worked on right now. It's good news, Linda. Good for you. Nicely done. Nicely done. Marlene says, you're right, Cherie. Never heard of a case being solved by a poster either. Yes, always hearing about posters being ripped down. Yeah. Charlotte says, years ago, one of my friend's sons was on one of the posters and they found him later. Did they find him due to that flyer, Charlotte? Or did they find him due to by other means? That would be interesting to me. So that's really all I can offer regarding that, Linda, is that it does seem to me that people put those flyers up just take for granted that putting the flyer up and doing nothing else is good enough. It's not. And that they don't understand that the flyer should be replaced once a month with a different color, different font. Just switch it up. Go in there and change it out. Other than that, I just don't know what else to say. I would not tell somebody to put more than that amount of work into it because, once again, as Sheree is saying, as I'm saying, I really don't know how many missing persons cases get solved by flyers anyway. Sassy says, certainly definitely doesn't hurt to have them out there. It doesn't hurt, Sassy. It certainly doesn't. But I think, once again, we have to look at this from an efficiency point of view. And we have to look at the ways in which it's best to spend one's time if they're interested in solving a disappearance. There's only so many hours a day, days in a week. What is the best way to use that time, whatever time that you have? And if you have a situation where a flyer has only solved 1 in 100,000 disappearances, then I'm not sure if it should be a priority, but it maybe should be priority 30, not priority 1. And so all of those other things, the first 29, maybe should get more attention, more time than posting a flyer at Walmart does. That's all I'm saying. Charlotte says, I really don't remember. I think he just turned up on his own, as often happens in disappearances that get solved and where the person is still alive. And I'm glad that that happened. Shree says Elizabeth Smart was stopped by law enforcement, somewhat, I guess, by luck. Sassy says, yes, switch it up. Coffee says multiple people called 911 over the flyers and publicity for Elizabeth Smart. Deborah says putting up posters helps people feel like they're doing something when they feel helpless, to agree. It does make them feel like they're doing something, but I think, Deborah, we also have to look at, this isn't about making people feel like they're doing something. This is about getting people to do things that are constructive. And are there other things that could be done instead of putting posters up that is actions that are more constructive? That's what I'm saying. Now, it may get to the point where putting posters up and spreading flyers around is the most constructive thing. But I'm not sure it's always the number one thing, especially when I think there's enough evidence to show that flyers are very, very, very hit and miss. Yeah. Coffee says law enforcement was called because 911 was called regarding Elizabeth Smart. Not Kristen Smart, Elizabeth Smart. I knew I was going to mess that up. So, these are tough topics. It's the same thing. Flyers are very much like dogs. It's one of those things where dogs rarely find missing people, but it's still done. Polygraphs rarely find missing people, but they're still done. These are things that, once again, if we're going to look at this as a science, and if this is really a study into what works and what doesn't work, and the best place to put time and money and effort and everything, then it would be hard for me to argue that those particular things should be at the top of the list. I'm not saying they shouldn't be on the list, but it's hard to argue that they should be at the top of the list because most of the time they don't lead to anything. And it's interesting we're having this conversation because I'm going to be talking to Dr. Telesco about this tomorrow. This very topic. Delane says, I think flyers may help if they are put in places where the missing person's acquaintance, especially for drug addicts, because the flyer may compel someone to come forward with info. It could, Delane. Could. All right, let's, it's a good question though, Linda. It's a thought-provoking question. The other issue I think with flyers is that I think the public's perception of them is different than what the statistics would say. The public thinks that putting flyers up is like the best thing in the world. I think that's the public perception. Whereas I think for those of us who do this every day, think about this every day, study this every day, we know that it rarely, works out, happens. Very rarely leads to the solution to a missing persons case. Delane says, most probably some families can't do anything else and maybe posting flyers makes them feel some comfort. It may, as I've stated many times, if on here, although I know even if I wrote a book, nobody would read it, regarding what people should do if they have a missing persons happen in their family. People aren't going to read it. The same reason that nobody worries about getting skin cancer. They go out in the sun and get sun, and they don't worry about skin cancer until they get it. It's just human nature. First thing families should do when a loved one goes missing is write down all the list of all the people who might have wanted this person to disappear and find out where those people were at the time. Because if this person, you can quickly rule out foul play or maybe rule it in. But then you can start determining, did this person walk off on his or her own or not? Because that's very, very important. It's one of the most important parts in the beginning of a disappearance. Figuring out if this person had any enemies, ex-boyfriend, etc., and where he was. And if you can determine that he was 100 miles away and everything else, then you can start looking at it. Well, it seems that this is probably not foul play. Well, then what are the alternatives? Is her car missing? Did she say she was going anywhere? Was she going somewhere? Did she, is her car missing and did she go into a river? That's what I would say. And I think that would be much more constructive than putting flyers up, my opinion. Sub Rosa, you must be new. I'd remember that one. Hi, Ed. I'm interested in your thoughts on why rewards don't seem to be effective. Money generally seems to be a huge motivator for people. You're right, Sub Rosa. You're right. Money usually is a huge motivator. The problem with rewards is that I think there's a couple things going on here, Sub Rosa. First of all, when people hear rewards, they automatically think of like the 1880s, the Old West. The sheriff puts the reward up, and there's I think in the United States, I don't know if we could, I'm not European, so I don't know. But here in the United States, we have, I think, a very romantic attachment to the word reward. We see it. We visualize the Old West. We've seen it in movies, Clint Eastwood movies, other types of Westerns, etc. Okay, so we have this very romantic attachment to it, and we think that it works just because it's in movies. We've heard about it. Of course, none of us lived in the 1880s. So there's that part of it. We have an irrational attachment to it. We have an emotional attachment that is not rational. In addition, I think what we know, I think law enforcement knows this, although I don't think that they can. I think I can speak much more freely about it than law enforcement ever could, is that really all rewards do is bring all the kooks out of the woodwork because they want the money. In addition, I think that what we've learned is that people are either going to talk or they're not going to talk. Whether they know something or don't know something, they're either going to talk or they're not going to talk. We could probably use Sabrosa, probably the best example that we now know about is Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. We now know pretty sure that after the Freemans were shot and killed and their place was burnt down and Laura and Ashley were taken, that those two girls were bound up, tortured, raped, and then after days, killed. And multiple people besides the three guys who showed up at the Freemans that night knew about this. And they saw the pictures and everything else, and none of them did a thing. And still haven't done a thing. Even though two of those guys are dead now. Even after two of those guys died within the last 20 years, those people, mostly women, never came forward. Now, if they're not going to come forward under those circumstances, there is not a dollar in the world that is going to cause them to do that. They're just bad people. They're just horrible, horrible, horrible people. It's the same reason, Sabrosa, we could look at it this way. It's the same reason that a lot of serial killers, or they don't even have to be serial killers, they just killed one person. They don't give up where a body is, even though they will get a lesser sentence or less years, take a year off, 10 years off their sentence, if they'll say, where did you put the person who you murdered? They won't do it. And probably the only way they would do that is if, the deal was, well, I'll let you know where it is, and then I don't have to go to jail at all. This is just something about human nature that exists. It's horrible, but people, so when it comes to money does not overcome fear. Money does not overcome a person's need to feel like he or she is still in control of the situation. Money doesn't overcome the guilt that somebody may feel that, yes, I should have done something at the time and I didn't. And now everybody's going to know about it. That's why. All of that to put together. And then on top of the fact, when you put money out there, just anybody, psychics, palm readers, everybody else, astrologists, everybody else start coming out of the woodwork hoping to make a buck. It just clouds the issue. And what really needs to be done, we don't need more rewards, Sabrosa. What we need is better understanding of missing persons cases and better investigation of them and taking them more seriously. Raising rewards, making it mega millions amounts is not going to change it. I mean, for some people, some of these rewards, Jennifer Kesse is at $100,000, has not solved it at all. You could raise it to $1 million, 10 million, 100 million. Wouldn't change anything. $100,000 is a lot of money to anybody, even Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, the Sultan of Brunei. They'd all take $100,000. $100,000 you'd think would do it. That's enough. It's not, because these people, their mind, it works in a different way. So I hope that answers your question, Sabrosa. Louise, do you think putting posters up helps? We don't do that really in UK. I don't know why. If we're using a facts-based study of this, Louise, then if the answer is either yes or no, I would say the answer is no. Although it does make people feel good. Unfortunately, flyers can bring forward a lot of alleged sightings or tips that lead nowhere. True. Linda, Ed, you should make this a list on a folder on the group page for what to do. Like I said, Linda, I could write probably 100,000 word book on what families should do or people should do regarding missing persons cases. Nobody's going to read it except all of you, because nobody ever thinks it's going to happen to them. It's no different than we tell people, you're going to get skin cancer if you go out in the sun for too long. People still do it. They don't care about skin cancer until they get it. People keep smoking and doing all these other things, even though there's all these warning packs. They don't think that's going to happen to them. And then it does. And then they can become very concerned. Well, by that time, it's too late. This is just human nature. Alice, how are you, my friend? I'm doing good. Cherie, J.R. Mullen, wife kept a journal, day one, best idea. I always think about that. Smart. Yes. Julie, right? Julie Mullen. Smart. I think she's one of the only people, I think still, Cherie, who did that, or has done that. Pretty sure. Kept a diary of every day. Great idea. Thought of it all on her own. Missing posters sometimes work for missing children. It's just, what is sometimes? Delane says, establish victimology should be the first step. Know who your victim is. Yes. Know who the victim is. Know who the missing person is. And who might have wanted to do something to him. Because once you can rule out it's not foul play, then we can start looking at, because that's the easiest part to do, figuring out where people were. One of the problems we have in disappearance is that a lot of these people, nobody realizes they're missing for several days, and then try going back and trying to figure out people's alibis from a week ago. It's going to be, if it was foul play, the killer is going to have a very easy time establishing an alibi a week from now. Maybe at the time, it'll be a lot more difficult. Kristen, thank you again. Once again, contributing through Super Chat. Kristen, I will thank you again. I don't mind doing that. Delane and Lacey Buenfel's mother-in-law made that huge timeline with names. That was another fantastic idea. Yeah. Fantastic idea. And I got to see that, Delane. I got to see that firsthand. We were at this restaurant 2 hours north of here where I met them. And it was so big. It was like on this huge table, and it was even bigger than the table. It was taping and stapling and all this stuff together. It was crazy, but fantastic. I loved it. Jay, hello. Good evening. Oh, yes, the Bible Freeman saga. Pretty sad. I think that town in northern Oklahoma is like a tight-knit community from what I saw on Wikipedia. Yeah, And they must have kept secrets really well, Jay. Charlotte says, I think some people won't come forward because they're afraid. I think that works for a little while, Charlotte. But to bring up the, Ashley Freeman, Laura Bible, two of those guys, one of them I think died in 2007. The other guy died in 2011. The only guy left was Ronnie Busick, and still everybody kept their mouth shut. Is that fear, or just these people just not give a dang? Cherie says Molly Tippett's reward was $500,000 solved without anyone coming forward, and reward being returned to donors. Happening right now. $500,000. Thank you, Cherie. Kristen says, I can't figure out Patreon, so here's my contribution. Well, thank you, Kristen. Maybe Cherie can help you with that, Kristen. Would love to have you on Patreon. Cherie, maybe you can contact her through the back channels and see what's going on there, because we'd love to have you in Patreon. Louise says it's like the Delphi case. Why can't I see this? I cannot see the slider to go back and forth. It's like the Delphi case. Of Abby and Libby. The reward is $350,000, and still nobody's charged with the girl's murder. Yeah. Alice says, screw the rewards, just do the right thing. If only, Alice. Madeline McCann, yeah. You're welcome, Sabrosa. Hello, Jill. What's going on, Jill? I heard in that small town, it was a very, I saw you wrote that, Jay. Yeah. As most towns are. I'm not saying that town's any different than any other. In fact, that's kind of my point. I think that what we're talking about here is something that is unfortunately part of human nature, even though the rest of us might not understand it, even though we're humans too. We can't understand how people know about a crime and never come forward, even though they didn't have anything to do with it. We don't understand that, even though we're humans too. The problem is we hear about enough of this in disappearances, in murders, in terrorist attacks. People knew about it beforehand, didn't do anything. There must be something within all of us that a lot of us may never tap into that in our lives, but it must be in us somewhere. All of us, even though maybe it's dormant in a lot of us, and maybe we're never put in that situation in our life. But it happens so much that I think you have to believe it is unfortunately part of human nature. Charlotte says, I watched an ex-cop who has a podcast on YouTube, and he said someone has to come forward in the Delphi case. He was talking to the guilty person in particular. Well, I don't know. Jill, thank you for your contribution. Good to see you in here tonight, Jill, and thank you. Very generous. Thank you. Yeah. Linda says, a friend of my daughter's went missing last year. I would be happy to share info with others. Yeah, I know. Deli, you must be new. I don't recognize you, Deli, but good to see you. Maybe your first time here. Nina, I've been listening to old blogs. You have come to be an expert. Your mama would be so proud. Oh, you're going to make me cry, Nina. I'm not allowed to cry in this live show. Got to keep it light here, but you're going to make me cry. Your mama would be so proud. I think you're great too. Nina, thank you. It is true. My mother was the biggest fan of Unfound. Certainly. And the last substantial conversation I had with her was on the phone. Had to have been about maybe 10 days, maybe not quite 2 weeks before she died. and it was about the program. As I've stated before, I continue to do this program in her memory, and that's the way it will always be. But Nina, thank you for saying that. Thank you. Louise, I think law enforcement are too slow to put out a missing persons request, even though the person is over 18. The parents or family know that it's out of character of that person. Yeah, tough topics, but important topics. And I'm glad some of you, Sabrosa, that's a great question. The Flyers question is a good one too. Once again, these are things that are just accepted. And at this point, after so many years of doing it, it's just like it's almost become a cliche. And at some point, maybe we need to start trying new things. We have to look at the things that people do and say, do they work or do they not work? And if they don't work, no matter, even if it's 1 in a million, we have to say that's probably not something that's worth taking the time to do if it only works 1 in a million times. Any update on the Unique Harris story? I know a guy was arrested, but no update. I just did an update episode back there in April, Jay. I said, I think all I had to say then. There's nothing new since then. I've not talked to her mother since the episode came out. We don't know why Unique, if this Unique and this guy knew each other. Would they have some relationship? Did he just happen to end up on her front door that night? Nobody knows any of that. Maybe that'll come out if there's a trial. I don't know. Sabrosa, interesting story. I found your channel when I was hiking behind a couple who were talking about your episode on Brian Schaefer. Is that right? Thought I would check it out. I'm glad I did. Well, I'm glad you did too, Sabrosa. Where were you hiking, if you can say, if you feel comfortable to say? That is a fantastic story. Where were you hiking? Speaking of posters and rewards, the family still puts out Eric Alvarado out there, which is fine. After nearly 3 years, I haven't heard anything new. Have you? I haven't. All right, let's move on to this. I got some other things to talk about. As I am talking and doing work this week, book season 2, volume 2, the Unfound book, is getting made right now. I am not working on it. Somebody else is. And I've given him all of the information that I think is needed. I think I told you last week, maybe he is the son of a woman that I worked with like 10 years ago, who was my editor for the fiction books, science fiction novels I wrote like 10 years ago. And she asked me if she thought her son could give it a shot, being that he's kind of getting in to the book industry. I said, great. So he's working on it, and I'm going to see what kind of work he does. His job is to make season 2, volume 2 look like all of the other other books that have already been made by myself. Can he copy that? Can he capture the same kind of feeling that I put in those books? Now, granted, I'm doing all the writing. The transcriptions, he is the one that's going to organize them, make sure everything, all the words and everything. I send him pictures. There's a few maps in that, all the observations, the links. I provide all the information, and he puts it all together. And he's also designing the cover for season 2 of volume 2. So we're going to see if it works out. I hope it does. I really hope it does. Because if so, then he is going to be responsible for all of the upcoming books. And it's not going to be cheap to get done, but it has to get done. I'm just going to have to do it. And it's as I stated earlier, when somebody asked me, am I going to get another car? Well, that was one of the considerations. I started thinking about that And I said, you know what? These books need to be done. They just need to be done. They need to be done. So anything that is Unfound related gets put to the forefront. Everything else gets put to the background. Disc golf, car, music, piano, guitar, trivia, everything else. Unfound is always number one. So I'm hoping that he does a good job. And if it does, then he is going to be working on the rest of the books. And like I said, it's not going to be cheap, and it shouldn't be. He's not working for free. This is real work. This is a real job that people do. There are people who do nothing but work with authors. Authors write books, and then they send what they've written to somebody who then puts it into an ebook form and designs all that stuff. That is common. I was kind of the exception, that I wrote it and then designed the covers, both for the fiction novels and these Unfound books. But I just don't have the time now. I keep saying that over and over and over, and it's true. So, if so, then he'll be responsible for the next. Of course, I'm going to have to be providing him with a lot of the material for all of the next, but it's going to be like 22, 23 additional books. We already have 7 done. This one he's working on right now will be 8. And at least 22 more need to be done to catch us even close up to, even close to the present. It's not doing 22 more Unfound books doesn't even get us to now in May of 2021. That only gets us to like August of last year. That just shows you how far we're behind. My fault. Nobody else's fault. My fault. So I have to correct it. So, but I'm excited about it because it needs to be done, and I can't wait. And I'm like, once again, if he doesn't do a good job or something, I'm not criticizing you, Jonathan. I just don't know yet. But if he doesn't, if it doesn't quite work out, then I'm going to have to find somebody else. But if it does work out with him, then he's going to be doing all of them. He'll be getting paid to do all of them. And this, I guess, is going to be his project for the rest of the year because he's not going to have a chance to do anything else. So, but like I said, I will still be doing the writing. I will be providing the all of the maps and everything that is written in the books. He knows how to get the transcriptions. He'll be doing the transcriptions. He'll be formatting them. The cheat way is just going to YouTube, and being that all the episodes are now on YouTube, it automatically generates transcripts. If you don't know that, he can just do and copy it, then format it and everything. It's a little easier. Kind of cuts down the process at least a little bit. But so I would say probably before the end of the year, whether it works out with him or it doesn't work out, we'll just have to see. But I think by the end of the year, Unfound's going to have like 30 books on Amazon, which is crazy. And that, once again, will not even catch us up to the present. And like I said, it's going to cost some money. It's not going to be cheap. And that's a lot. It's a lot of work. But has to be done. I'm not doing anything else. This is what I do. So it has to get done. So that is going to be interesting to have that many books out there one way or the other by the end of the year, because we have 7 and it would be crazy to have 30. And there's not one other podcast, true crime podcast, that's doing books at all. Not ebooks, not print books, not audiobooks, nothing. And once these books get done, though, I'll be able to turn them into audiobooks, and we'll be able to offer some discounts. You'll be able to buy, an entire season for one price, or buy the print editions or the ebooks and get a discount. We're going to be able to do a lot of different things once we get to that point. So I'm excited about all of it. It's just, I'm going to be a lot I'm going to be a lot poorer when it gets done, but I already know that. Okay. What's some of you saying here? Sub Rosa says Banff. You know, my parents went to Banff, Sub Rosa, way back in the day. Must have been in the 90s. I think I still lived in Pennsylvania. They went on in Canada. They went to Banff, loved it. So you were hiking in Banff, and somebody was talking about the Brian Schaefer episode. I love hearing stuff like that. That is just so interesting to me. Just so it's kind of like that time when I called that park ranger about one of my discs that I left over at the park. And as I was calling him, he was listening to one of the episodes, which still blows my mind. I've been doing this program for 4.5 years, and I don't know. I'm still amazed when I find out people are listening to it. I don't know. Sassy says, I just moved from Calgary. Banff makes me homesick in Ontario now. I'm much more familiar with Ontario, Sassy. Been up to Toronto and Peterborough and Rice Lake. Been there many, 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 many times, Sassy. Charlotte says, I'm amazed at how dedicated you are, Ed. You are great. Charlotte, it's just what I do. It's work. You know, all of you do your own things in your lives. You know, you have responsibilities for your job. You have responsibilities for your family. And those things come number one. And so, you know, I'm dedicated to this and you're dedicated to what you do, and it all works out. So, and I'm happy to do it. So, Delhi, my 200th time watching more like in UK. So this is late. Telesco soon. Yeah, tomorrow. Not just soon, Delhi, tomorrow. We've got a couple UK people, Louise and Delhi in there. I love it. Okay. Prolific. Twinkle says you're prolific. Well, you know, the funny thing is, Twinkle, if we get 30 books on Amazon, I think we'll still have fewer. The right word is fewer books than Stephen King. But he had like a 35-year start on me. And really what we're doing is converting, you know, all of the episodes, the information into a book form. That's what we're doing. In addition, adding some of the writing that I've done on the Patreon blog into the books. Not the entire blog, but some of the blog into the books. So a lot of the information already exists. It's just a matter of putting it into a form that people understand and proofreading it and all that other stuff. That's the stuff that takes the time. Finding the information already exists. It's organizing it that is very difficult. Alice says she has to go. Alice, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for giving Unfound a little bit of your day today. Thank you. Sassy says you are a huge deal. So many people know I listen to you. And if they don't, they do when I'm done with them. Sassy, I can't thank you enough. Word of mouth is the best kind of marketing. So, Sassy, thank you very much. Thank you. It's, you know, it's like I said, I know that I've noticed a change kind of within the last maybe 6 months. I don't know why that is. That now it seems more and more people who I run into at trivia, at disc golf, whether it's going to the club on Sunday mornings or some of these tournaments, even though I really don't bring it up, that more and more people somehow or another are finding out what I do. And it's just, like I said, my perception is just within the 6 months that has changed. No. Thank you, Spicy. And you are very generous. Thank you for your super chat contribution. Deborah says, following your passion is invaluable. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. So let's move on to this. Dr. Telesco tomorrow night. We'll be discussing the disappearance of Kelly Rothwell, which happened right down the street from where I live now. In fact, when I go to get gas, when I go to get my Mega Millions tickets, it's at the gas station that's right across the street from where Kelly Rothwell lived with David Perry and where he most likely murdered her. So that is the disappearance we'll be talking about tomorrow night with Dr. Telesco. She picked it out. It'll be on her YouTube channel, Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice, 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow evening. And it will probably go as it usually does for an hour or a little longer than that. Do not forget, I will be posting about it tomorrow, so nobody forgets. The Stats Project, some of you wrote me and say, well, last week, Ed, you talked about how you'd like to start putting disappearance statistics together. Well, you should talk to Dr. Telesco about that. Well, we're going to talk about that tomorrow night, not during the show, but either before or after. I'll be running these ideas past her and see what she thinks about. Maybe she might have some graduate student or somebody like that might be interested in working on that. But it's something one way or another that needs to get done. This is like the books. It's something that needs to be done. It's a lot of work, but it needs to be done. So I will be talking to Dr. Telesco about it tomorrow night. And so for those of you who suggested that, thank you. And more than one person suggested that. So maybe it's a pretty good idea. And if you don't know what I'm exactly talking about, you can go back to last week's live show. What I'm thinking of is like a disappearance version of a disappearance analysis, like Moneyball, sabermetrics has been to baseball. Doing that type of statistical analysis with disappearances. Just an idea. And it's the reason probably that I've watched the movie Moneyball like 10 times over the last couple months because I DVR'd it. And then I also got the audiobook for Moneyball, and I've listened to the audiobook 3 times, continuing to work through the ideas of how all of this could relate to missing persons cases. I know it can, just have to figure it out. Delane says, I want to start a little free library for my neighborhood, but unfortunately I won't be putting my unfound books in there. But maybe I'll buy a couple extra copies of one and then to put in there. Well, I might be able to donate a couple, Delane. Maybe. Yes, of course. I could donate a couple. Louise says, Deli Boon, I'm not getting notifications. I don't know why. I've just subscribed and hit the bell for notifications, but don't get them. Well, Louise, you have to understand something is that as I found out recently by watching a totally different YouTube show having nothing to do with true crime, is that you have to hit the bell on the device that you're on. So you may use your phone and hit that little bell, but if you're not on your phone, if you're on your tablet, you won't get the notification on your tablet. You have to hit the notification on every single different device that you have. I just discovered that recently. I didn't know that. So maybe that is something to do with it, Louise. So there you go. Maybe some of you saw that within the last week, remains were found in Longview, Texas. A disappearance that I think Unfound is somewhat known for. We covered the disappearance of Brandy Wells. She disappeared from a country bar there. I continue to believe that she ran into a guy there that eventually killed her, in my opinion. But some remains were found not far from where the bar was at the time, where her phone was found. It was found near this lake called Lake Lamond. But we now know that these remains are not Brandy's. They are of a man, not a woman. So the search goes on. And that was something that her mother, Ellen, put out today. Fairly new news that it was not Brandy's remains. So I don't know if that's good news. I don't know if that's bad news. It's news. So I know some of you saw that, but might not have seen that Ellen has posted. It's not Brandy. So that's an update there. Um, Karen says, if opportunity ever comes up, I would love to be considered to read your books in audiobook format. Wow, Karen. Have you done that before? Have you ever read other books that are like on Amazon's audio store? If it is, then I suppose we might be able to put something together. I really, it's not going to happen soon, but sure, we could consider that. I know eventually, I know that I'm not going to be reading them because I don't have the time. But somebody will eventually do it. And there are people who do that for a living. They make good money just reading audiobooks. They have that great voice or whatever else. And then some authors read their own books like Bruce Dickinson did for his. So, well, thank you for the offer, Karen. Delane says you also need to probably set the bell for all. There you go, Delane or Louise. Joyce, are you leaving us? Okay. Well, good night. Good night to you, Joyce. Fantastic seeing you in the chat tonight. I hope you're doing well up there in the panhandle of Florida. Great to see you. Thank you. Another question here. Charlotte. I know Charlotte's in here. Do you think that when a person goes missing that the neighbors or potential witnesses are questioned enough? Or do you think that the police don't really try to find the person in a lot of cases? I think that they are questioned, Charlotte, but my perception is because this is a question that often comes up that I ask is, well, we're going to be covering Disappearance, not this Friday, but next Friday, where it's certainly relevant. We just don't know what those answers are. I'll ask somebody, well, it seems like the person walked away from his or her house or her car or something where other people should have seen. And it seems nobody saw anything. Maybe we think like Jamie Bowen, who was at her sister's and she allegedly left. And some guy, the neighbor, said he saw that Jamie walking down the street, but after that, nobody saw her. Well, did nobody see her? Is this guy just making that up? Did she ever really leave her sister's? We don't know. I think what we find out in me asking those types of questions is how much people don't see. And it's weird for me. Now, granted, where I live now, I am so insulated from anything. The windows here that look this way, I have to go out onto the landing by the balcony on that side of the building to even see down to the street. Over here, even if I'm sitting, where the TV is on the couch, wherever, if I look out to the west, all I see is water. I don't see any people that way either. So I'm very insulated up here on the 8th floor. But when I lived in Madeira Beach, I lived on the ground floor. It was only a 1-floor building. The windows looked right onto the street. I saw everybody that went by. I saw every car. I saw every person that got pulled over by a cop, people walking to the beach, people walking from the beach, drunks walking by my place each way. I saw everything. And what I found out is a lot of people aren't like me. They may have a house in a neighborhood with big windows and they're sitting inside, and it's amazing how much people don't see. So I think that Charlotte, I think that they are questioned. But I also think that a lot of people just aren't paying attention. I don't know what else to say. I also think what also is going on is we overestimate the length of time that a person who has walked away would have been in the field of vision. All it takes is 30 seconds. A woman's watching TV and she decides she needs to go to the kitchen, go to the refrigerator to get something to drink. And she may only be there for a minute. And in that minute, a missing person leaves the house next door, walks by her house into the woods, and that's it. And then she comes back and then finds out her neighbor went missing. And the police come over and say, did you see anything? And she says, no, I was sitting here all night. All I went to the refrigerator for like a minute and I didn't see anything. That leads the police to think the person didn't walk off. Well, a minute is more than enough time for a human to walk by a house and not be seen if somebody's not looking. It's just the way these things work out sometimes. Karen and Jamie's so tiny. Well, we're all, Karen, I love it, Delane. Everyone should have access to books. Yes. Louis says, I only have my phone and have pressed the bell for notifications. I don't have any other devices. I don't know what to tell you. It's very strange, Louise. And Jamie is so tiny. Well, she is tiny, Karen. But we're all very small compared, to the woods, a forest, a city. Doesn't matter if you're 5 foot or you're as big as Shaquille O'Neal. You start looking for a human body in an area that big, we're all about the same. Pretty tiny. Delane says, I have a ranch style home, so our living space is in the back. I see nothing. Exactly. You're welcome, Charlotte. That's just my opinion. It's just, it's kind of weird, Charlotte, because I think on one hand, I think a lot of us, although I've not lived in that kind of situation really ever, but I think the perception is in your normal suburban neighborhood is that people think that their neighbors are fairly nosy. You always have that person on the street who's kind of nosy. What's everybody doing? Maybe you have somebody that's part of the HOA making sure that everybody's in line and all of this stuff. But then when it comes to a missing persons case, nobody sees anything. It does seem like there is some kind of paradox there, and I can't deny that. But over and over, we hear about disappearances where people were at home and then they weren't, and the neighbors around said, nope, we didn't see anything. Now, that's not always the situation. Chris Sanders, if you believe it, he was at his little trailer there in Monahans, Texas, and he went out to his vehicle and left it with the door open, the alarm going off, and he just walked off onto I-20 and people saw him do it. Even though we have witnesses for that, although some people may not believe those witnesses, we have witnesses to that, and that case is still unsolved. So even when you have witnesses of people walking away, cases can still remain unsolved. It's tough. It's tough. Sassy says, said thing is a lot of people want to see nothing. I don't know if that's the case, Sassy. I think that there are situations where if people hear their neighbors, having a domestic argument or something, that they maybe turn the radio up a little louder and everything else. But on the other hand, should that fight boil out into the front yard and they're wrestling each other in the front yard, I think everybody's going to watch. So I think it just depends. Karen says, I guess no fishing in my province with your buddy and his son this year. Karen, yeah, Canada and United States because of COVID. Yeah, we won't be doing any fishing up there this year. Dad's a little disappointed about that. Charlotte, so that's my answer. I think police, although I have a lot of criticisms of them, I think that they do talk to neighbors. It just seems a lot of times neighbors don't have anything to say. And that's something I'm continuing to examine of why that is. I want to talk about this. I'm just going to read this story. There was a story about scammers that I posted in the discussion group. I'm just going to read it. Kind of like 20 minutes left in the program. I don't want to go past 11 o'clock. Scammers are targeting families who post missing persons on social media. They gather information about the missing person and then contact the family, demanding a ransom without ever having physical contact with the missing person. Very common. After identifying a missing person on social media, scammers research details of the disappearance, the missing person, and the missing person's family. The scammers often find telephone numbers for the family members on social media and use third-party calling or messaging applications to make ransom demands to disguise their true telephone number. In August 2020, a mother reported her 13-year-old girl is missing. The family used social media to ask for assistance and posted a personal telephone number, which individuals claiming to have kidnapped the daughter used to contact the mother demanding ransom. It's one of those rules. Don't use your own phone number we were talking about flyers. Don't use your own phone number. The girl had not been abducted and eventually returned home on her own. In May 2020, a father reported his son missing to law enforcement. The child's family created social media posts seeking assistance in locating their child, after which the child's father received a text message demanding ransom. The criminal actor generally requests between $5,000 and $10,000 in ransom, with $7,000 requested in multiple instances. FBI investigations indicate these offenders do not offer proof of life. However, in one instance, an accomplice made telephone calls to family members claiming to be the missing person. Offenders often claim the missing person is ill or injured, adding to the urgency of the situation and putting additional pressure on family members to pay the ransom. People are terrible. In May 2018, a family reported an 18-year-old woman as missing. Local media reported the disappearance and family members posted a request for information on her disappearance to social media, along with a personal telephone number. Individuals claiming to have abducted the woman contacted the family telephonically, there's a word, at the provided personal number. One of the scammers claimed to be the victim and spoke to family members saying they were drugged, threatened with physical assault, and taken to another state. Subsequent investigations revealed the missing woman was never abducted and was eventually found unharmed. Since the onset of COVID-19 nationwide stay-at-home orders, law enforcement has received several reports of scammers targeting families who have posted on social media about their missing family member. Although scammers used social media to identify victims prior to the pandemic, the effects of COVID-19 on families' well-being are an added vulnerability and an additional opportunity for these actors to extort families of missing persons. If you believe you are or someone you know is a target or victim of an extortion attempt related to a missing person, contact your local law enforcement agency or your local FBI field office. File a complaint online with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Victims are encouraged to keep all original documentation, emails, text messages, and logs of communication with the subject. Do not delete anything before law enforcement is able to review it. Tell law enforcement everything about the online encounters. It may be embarrassing for the parent or missing person, but it's necessary to find the offender. When reporting online scams, be as descriptive as possible in the complaint form by providing name and or username of the subject, email addresses and telephone numbers used by the subject, websites used by the subject, description of all interaction with the subject. It is helpful for law enforcement to have as much information as possible to use while investigating these incidents. However, it is not required in order to receive assistance. Yeah. As I've talked about a couple times before, although I don't think that I've ever mentioned what disappearance it is. In fact, it's one that we still not covered on the program. I spoke to the mother of a missing young woman a few years ago. This was still while I lived in Madeira Beach, because I remember talking to her on the phone and where I was. She was absolutely convinced that a person who contacted her had her daughter, and that there was some auction going on the dark web, and her daughter was being auctioned off. And this person convinced this mother if she would meet him somewhere, bring $5,000, and he would buy her daughter and get the daughter back to the mother. And this woman, who is a very intelligent woman, like her, got along with her, although she's still not been on the program, was convinced that this guy was telling the truth. And as many ways as I tried to rationally convince her that this was a scam, she was convinced it wasn't a scam. This is the emotions taking over. Emotions getting in the way of better judgment. And I totally understand mother's desperate. And this is still a disappearance that is still unsolved to this day. And I think the disappearance is about 4 years old now, maybe 5 years. Maybe not even that. But she was absolutely convinced. And I eventually had to tell her. And this is one of those ways that, I end up having to be bad cop. Even though it's good cop, it's bad cop, where I have to give this person bad news because nobody else seems to want to do it or has the knowledge to do it or whatever else. And I've had to do this to some of the guests who've been on the program. I just have to say to them, that's a lie, right? You have to do it. It sucks. And so I you just have to tell this woman who I've never met, and I maybe even only had a couple phone calls with her at that point. I just had to tell her, that's a scam, right? And I told her, I eventually had to tell her, if you go get that money out of the bank and you do what this person says, you may end up going missing too. And luckily, I don't know if it was necessarily myself who convinced her not to do it, but she eventually did not do this. And in fact, what I found out eventually was this was a very popular scam going on at that time. Very particular type of scam, the same wording being used, not just for this disappearance, for a multitude of disappearances, including some that had already been covered on Unfound. So, scammers out there, this is the situation that you put me in, having to tell these people that all of you are scamming them, but I'm not going to stop doing that. I'm going to keep telling these people the truth. That even if it makes, it hurts them and maybe even causes them to not like me, it's still what I have to do. But it sucks. But just thought I'd read that. I posted that in the group and on the page. Stories about scammers in regards to missing persons cases. Those kind of stories are always going to get my attention. Let's see. Okay. Hello, Jody. Thank you for tuning in. Unfortunately, we're just about done, Jody, but thank you for tuning in. Thank you for making a little time tonight. Linda says, these scammers are master manipulators. For some reason, they stopped calling my house. I always mess with them. Well, yeah, they are master manipulators. They have a lot of experience at it. It's, Linda, to give you maybe a better example that everybody understands, it's like when you go to buy a car. The reason that used car salesman is able to, unfortunately, manipulate people and get them to buy a car that people maybe don't want or can't afford or everything else is because that person has sold 1,000 cars and your average person has only bought 8 cars. That's why. It's not necessarily that he's any smarter or the customers are stupid or anything else. It's just that this guy or this woman has a lot of experience in this area and the customers don't. And that's one of the reasons with my experience, now over 200 disappearances, my guests only have experience with one disappearance, their own. They don't know what's going on in all these other cases out there. So what I try to bring is my experience with all those other 200 cases and try to give them good advice. And so one of those things is trying to keep them away from scammers, trying to keep them away from private investigators who will take their money and do nothing. Just as I've stated many times, as I just stated on on the Q&A episode or the update episode, this program is not just a podcast. We're giving guests a lot of advice behind the scenes on the do's and don'ts of what should be, what they should be doing and everything. It's more than just a podcast. I'm more than just interviewing people here. Don't like for my guests to be fooled. I take that personally. One more question. Faith, with the technology we have today, do you think it's easier to find a missing person? Is everyone working hard enough? How do so many missing people go missing for this long with little to no info? I talked about this faith during the Q&A episode. So I would go Faith and listen to the Q&A episode. It was, I don't know. It's unfortunately Q&A episode's long, but somewhere in there, I answered a question about technology and how, in relations to missing persons cases, video, social media, phones, etc. And in fact, Faith, if you're watching, what you also might like to do, you might want to do is go and listen to the interview I did on my friend April A. Bear's program in April. And also the last show I did with Dr. Telesco, we also kind of touched upon that a little bit. So I've answered this question before, Faith, and it's a long answer. And I just, we're running out of time here a bit. And I've already answered this recently. I would tell you, go back. Probably the most efficient thing is to find the interview I did with my friend April A. Bear in April. And you'll find out in that discussion about technology and missing persons cases. One more thing before I talk about this Friday's episode. I need to give a shout out to my assistant, Cherie, who's the moderator, of letting me know about this bizarre, these two murders in Colorado. That it's a bizarre story. I only have a couple minutes to go through it, but back on January 6th of 1982, Annette Schnee and Barbara Oberholzer were killed on the same day, and it was during a snowstorm in Colorado. And these two women did not know each other, but they were murdered in the vicinity of Breckenridge, Colorado. And this is a murder that went unsolved until just recently. They had DNA, the police had DNA of the man who killed them, and they knew that these two murderers were related to each other, even though these two women did not know each other. Well, it wasn't until they ended up figuring out who this guy was, and his name is Alan Lee Phillips, is that on the very night that he had killed these two women, he had gotten caught in that same snowstorm in his car. He was stuck on a highway in Colorado all by himself, and he was saved by flashing his headlights at a jet that was flying overhead. He was flashing SOS, 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 with 3 longs, 3 shorts, and 3 longs again. Or maybe it's the opposite. And this jet, somebody on the jet saw this, somehow told the pilot radioed, and this guy got saved due to him flashing his lights at this overhead jet, and he was saved that night. Well, when, of course, police or whoever went out to find him stuck on this road, he had just been in the process of driving home from killing these two women. And that wasn't all figured out until this year. And you can go back and find the news stories about Annette and Barbara being murdered. And you can also find stories about this guy, Alan Lee Phillips, being saved due to the flashing of his lights. And little did anybody know that those two stories were related. Amazing story. My assistant Cherie told me about it. She was listening to another program on YouTube and found out about it. And and I listened to it. Bizarre story, but it took almost 40 years for it to be solved, but just a bizarre set of circumstances. What's still unclear to me, though, is why this guy murdered these two women in the first place. I don't know if he murdered any women before that, any women after that. What was it on January 6, 1982 that he felt the need to murder these two women? I'm still not sure if they know that. They know who did it, but I'm maybe Cherie, I think, knows the story better than I do. But I thought I would share it all with you in case you'd like to look. Once again, Annette Schnee, Schnee, and Barbara Oberholzer, Oberholtzer. And his name is Alan Lee Phillips. This is from the Breckenridge, Colorado area, 1982. Karen asked, Ed, once you have done an interview, if the body is found, do you continue to discuss murderers or do you? Once the body's, for example, Karen, Tom Brown, we covered his disappearance. His remains were found in early 2019. I continue to talk about it just because a cause of death has not been determined. Some people believe that he was murdered, so I continue to talk about it. It just depends on the circumstances. Andrea Bowman, some of the, her Dennis Bowman's going to be going to trial. So we still talk about those things. We will follow these cases to their end. I mean, Devin Bond committed suicide. We just took it, unfortunately, though, I've still not talked to his mother, about that. But we do try to continue this to whatever that end is. Crystal Morrison, her remains were found after we covered it. Her disappearance, no foul play. We talked about it. But we don't cover murders on the program. When we cover them for the program, they are unsolved disappearances. So there, I think that hopefully that answers your question, Karen. All right, let's go to this Friday's disappearance. The disappearance of Toby Anderson, 16-year-old. He was in Selma, Oregon. I know Selma is a very big town in the South related to civil rights. The fight for civil rights for blacks in the United States during the 1960s. But this is Selma, Oregon. And he went missing during the fall of 1986. He had some problems. He got sent to live with his Uncle Billy and Uncle Billy's family, and everything seemed fine. Then all of a sudden, Toby wasn't there anymore. 16 years old. The story was that he ran off, and his parents, who lived in California, and all the other family members, Toby's younger sister, younger brother, all believed that story. And that's the way it was for about 30 years until about 2016, when Toby's younger sister, Marcy, decided that she wanted to figure out, well, if Toby ran away, I want to try to find him. And it wasn't until she started petitioning different state records and things to find out that there was no Toby Anderson with that birthday. Nobody out there in the United States that fit that. And then her cousin, Marcy's cousin, Denise McGarity, who is the guest for this Friday, got involved. And little by little, I think that this family's opinion on what happened to Toby in 1986 has changed. It's little by little. And that is why this episode is being called Thicker Than Water. Blood, of course, what's the saying? Blood is thicker than water. Family, is closest. I think, for example, we probably let family members get away with things we wouldn't let our friends and coworkers and everything get away with. Blood is thicker than water. So we're going to be talking a lot about family in this episode. And all of you may be thinking about, do we give family the benefit of the doubt that we would not give to other people? And so you're going to be hearing about everything that went on from 1986 to the present regarding the disappearance of 16-year-old Toby Anderson from Oregon. Once again, this is the fall of 1986. Selma, Oregon, and his cousin Denise McGarity will be the guest. That's this Friday. Great interview. I think the episode will be about an hour and 50 minutes long. Cherie says of Alan Phillips, I think he's a serial killer. Only my personal opinion. Sassy's leaving. All right. Sassy says, awesome show. Well, thank you. I do my best, Sassy. Linda says there doesn't seem to be a lot of information out there on Toby. Linda, you're right. And that's why you're going to find that most of the discussion I have with Denise is about family and about their attitude toward Toby's disappearance when it happened in 1986. Everything that happened since. Did they talk about it? What did they do about it? Other things that went on in the 1990s. I think it's a fascinating discussion. Even though there are not a lot of details, I think we get to look inside a family and how they react to a disappearance and how, like I said, they were so sure that one thing happened in 1986, but now not so sure. Jay, do I know the disappearance of Antoinette? No, I'm not even going to attempt. Cayadetto, never heard of it, Jay. Louise, okay. Lisa's leaving. Karen, is Uncle Billy still around? He is. He's in jail. Charlotte, okay. Everybody's getting out. Maybe I should be getting out too. So that is this Friday, the disappearance of Toby Anderson. You're right. There's not a lot of information, but we still found a way to talk about quite a bit that is relevant. So that's the end of the show. What did we do tonight? Talked a lot about Phil Mickelson. Do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. Disc golf last weekend, this weekend. I'm down to 178 pounds. Not playing guitar and piano as much as I like. Very busy. Got some new shirts that I showed all of you. The Towne-Woolard poll, Patreon blog, season 2, volume 2 of the Unfound book series is getting made. Dr. Telesco tomorrow night. Don't forget. We got a newsletter, by the way, coming out next week too. Stats Project, Remains in Longview or Not. Brandy Wells talked about scammers. Talked about Annette Schnee and Barbara Oberholzer. Took some great questions and then finished it up with a preview of the disappearance of Toby Anderson. That's all I have. Great show. As Cherie says, keep your head on a swivel out there. Be safe out there. Be aware of your surroundings. And you'll hear me on Friday. Good night, everyone. Give this video a thumbs up. Good night.